Hey, I think your table is needed elsewhere, Grandma. This section is reserved for people who actually serve this country, not just complain about it. The voice was loud, laced with entitlement, and cut through the smoky haze of the VFW hall like a rusty blade. It belonged to Captain Alex Ace Harrington, the designated lead instructor for the nearby Air Force Tactical Training Wing, and he stood with three other junior officers, Lieutenant Mark Davies, Ensign Chris Mills, and Lieutenant Junior Grade Ryan Price, who formed a suffocating barrier around the table. It was Tuesday night, officers' night, at the Eagle's Nest, a bar infamous for being the unofficial mess hall for the local base. The dim, fluorescent lighting, designed to mimic a cozy, late-evening patrol break, cast harsh shadows over the group of young men and the woman they were intimidating. Evelyn Eve Vance, 68, had barely touched her hot chamomile tea. The bar specialized in non-alcoholic comfort drinks for the base's older veterans, when the four officers approached. She wore a simple, dark turtleneck and a jacket that looked well-worn and expensive, the kind of quality clothing that spoke of investment, not flash. "Is there a problem, gentlemen?" Evelyn asked, her voice a low, resonant rumble, calm but firm, without looking up from the framed photo she had set on the table, a faded image of two young men in crisp, early-issue military uniforms. "The problem," Alex continued, leaning forward with a heavy thud of his fist on the polished wood, "is that this isn't exactly the kind of place for civilian gatherings. You know, old lady, we don't want any trouble." His partner, Lieutenant Mark Davies, shifted uncomfortably. He was the only one whose instinct registered the quiet authority in the woman's posture, but the momentum of his cohort was too strong to resist. Evelyn finally looked up. Her eyes met Alex's with a piercing clarity that felt unsettling. There was no fear there, only the deep, almost weary patience of someone who had long since transcended petty insults. The crime she had committed, in their view, was twofold: occupying their space, and doing so with an air of absolute peace that refuted their aggression. "Trouble? I'm having a quiet cup of tea, Captain." The third officer, Ensign Chris Mills, the youngest and most visibly eager to impress, gave a harsh, practiced laugh. "Don't you get it? This bar is ours, our turf, and we don't like suspicious characters around here. We're celebrating a successful drill, and we don't need distractions." The atmosphere thickened. The few other patrons, mostly older veterans nursing their drinks, discreetly turned their heads or pretended to study the memorabilia on the walls. Three uniformed officers against one elderly black woman. It was the kind of situation sensible people preferred to ignore, hoping the civilian would simply acquiesce. Evelyn filed the moment away. Years of training, years of fieldwork, all condensed into immediate, nonverbal assessment. She wasn't processing anger, she was processing data points of failure. What Captain Alex Harrington didn't know was that Evelyn's moment of silence was not submission. It was tactical evaluation rooted in the most rigorous combat psychology training the Naval Special Warfare Command offered. The alpha arrogance. His greatest vulnerability was his total belief in the power of his rank insignia, a failure in ethical leadership, Article 133, UCMJ. His center of gravity was too far forward, aggressive, signifying a lack of control. Evelyn calculated that he would escalate to physical contact within 90 seconds. The weak conscience. Mark was the only officer whose eyes held shame. He was the procedural weak link, capable of breaking ranks but paralyzed by peer pressure. Evelyn designated him as a non-threat in a physical confrontation, but a crucial witness in a legal one. The untrained escalator. Mills was visibly intoxicated by both the environment and the perceived authority. His breathing was shallow, his movements jerky. He was the most likely to commit the first act of physical violence, thereby upgrading the charge from harassment, minor, to aggravated assault, general court-martial territory. The silent conformist. Price had said nothing. He simply stood, supporting the action through silence. This revealed the deepest institutional flaw, the belief that witnessing misconduct without intervention is tacit compliance, a violation of the oath of office. The core problem, Evelyn realized, was not malice, but institutional entitlement. These officers genuinely believed the entire military community, the legacy, the uniform, the space, belonged exclusively to their immediate rank structure. They lacked the historical perspective to see the uniform as a mantle inherited, not owned. "Look, I don't want any trouble, Captain," Evelyn finally said, her voice maintaining that stable, low tone. "I have a routine. I finish my tea, I leave. We can all walk away. No fuss." "No," Alex slammed his palm on the table. You're leaving now, and you're going to thank me for being lenient. You are interfering with morale. A memory flashed. Guantanamo Bay, 2005. Evelyn, then a commander overseeing a high-stakes intelligence exchange, faced a colonel attempting to bypass her protocol. You challenge my rank. He'd roared. No, Colonel, she had calmly stated. I challenge your judgment. And my judgment carries more institutional weight than your rank in this room. You know, Evelyn said softly, reaching into her inner jacket pocket in a slow, meticulous motion. It would be interesting to see your IDs. Just to make sure you're really the gentleman you claim to be, right? Protocol, of course. Alex's face flushed a deep, ugly red. Are you challenging my rank? Mark quickly put his hand on Alex's shoulder. Alex, drop it. She's leaving. That request for protocol from an elderly woman was the single detail that triggered Mark's professional fear. You run this country, Evelyn repeated to Chris. That is an interesting claim. Alex pushed her shoulder roughly. Get up now. This is insubordination. Evelyn rose slowly. Her movement was an efficient glide. She was ready. The sheer audacity of their disrespect stemmed from their profound ignorance of the institutional weight of Evelyn Vance. They saw an elderly civilian. The Department of Defense saw a legend, the architect of ethical warfare. Evelyn was one of the first women, and the first black woman, to integrate into the Naval Special Warfare training pipeline during a critical, experimental phase in the 1980s. Her strength was never her muscle mass, but her psychological endurance, her ability to eliminate all emotional noise. Her initial entry was met with systemic sabotage. Missing gear, delayed paperwork, constant low-level ridicule. She treated it not as personal attack, but as an operational endurance test. She learned to function on 4 hours of sleep for weeks, fueled not by caffeine, but by the intellectual challenge of overcoming the logistical hurdles. Her defining success came during the 96-hour, non-stop mental and physical gauntlet known as the Bell Test. She was subjected to unique psychological stressors designed to exploit her isolation. While her male counterparts struggled with exhaustion, Evelyn learned to enter a state she called ethical isolation, where she existed only to process mission data, removing all emotional feedback. She never touched the bell. Her promotion to SEAL Team Command was solidified by a profound operational crisis during a joint service mission in Southeast Asia. A young, arrogant Air Force pilot, strikingly similar to Captain Alex in his entitlement, initiated an unauthorized, high-risk strike that resulted in collateral civilian loss and threatened to expose the entire mission, violating international rules of engagement. Vance, then a lieutenant commander, had a choice: cover the mistake to protect inter-service relations, or report the pilot and risk her career. She halted the mission, risked her life to evacuate the civilian population, and personally filed the complaint that led to the pilot's general court-martial. Her testimony became legend in the SJA world. A willingness to ignore the chain of command, combined with excessive ego, is not courage. It is operational negligence. My loyalty is to the uniform and the ethical code it represents, not to the rank of the officer wearing it. This act established her as the rare warrior who possessed both lethal capability and unyielding moral authority. Director Thorne, a senior figure then, saw to her immediate promotion, recognizing her value as an institutional conscience. Her current role as senior advisor for inter-service ethical oversight was not a retirement post. It was a mandate to neutralize ethical failures before they became public disasters. She wasn't just observing the toxic culture of the nearby base. She was actively scouting for the kind of institutional rot that Alex Harrington now embodied. Her presence in the VFW was a covert field exercise, an unannounced evaluation of the base's ethical climate. She was the final, devastating quality control check, and Alex was about to fail spectacularly. We're leaving, Evelyn said, walking toward the door. But you're going to deeply regret how you handled this situation. The walkout was her final lure. Alex, blinded by rage and the need to assert dominance, took the bait. The parking lot was dimly lit. Evelyn stopped near a large, unmarked black SUV parked deep in the shadows, the vehicle belonging to her security detail. Alex violently pushed Evelyn against the side of a parked sedan. You know what the problem is with people like you? You think you can challenge authority anywhere you go. Evelyn stood motionless, calculating. She knew the moment Alex physically touched her, the situation escalated. Now, she was waiting for the final, irreversible action. You be very careful what you say, Captain, Evelyn interrupted softly. Some words can't be taken back. You are documenting your destruction for posterity. Chris stepped forward, raising his hand to push her. Call the Pentagon. We are the military, you idiot. We're going to search you. Alex began aggressively patting her jacket pockets. Let's see what we have here. Wallet. Phone. He threw her small, military-grade smartphone on the ground. This action, the illegal confiscation and destruction of private property, was a clear violation of Article 134, making the case a certainty. Give that back, Evelyn ordered. It was an order of command, not a request. Alex picked up on the tone. Or what exactly are you going to do? I am a captain. Do you guys have any idea how many articles of the UCMJ you've violated? Evelyn asked. Chris poked Evelyn's chest. People like you always want attention. We haven't offered any resistance yet, Evelyn said. Alex pulled handcuffs from his belt. Hands behind your back now. No, Evelyn said simply. I will not be handcuffed. And if you try to touch me again, you will find out it was the worst decision you ever made for your career. Alex, paralyzed by the defiance, grabbed his radio to call for base security, a final, fatal act of self-incrimination, committing to the illegal arrest. Chris, desperate for a physical resolution, pulled out his collapsible baton. Enough talk, he growled, advancing. The baton sliced through the air, aimed for Evelyn's shoulder, but never reached its target. Evelyn simply moved her head and torso $math 5 centimeters to the side. The movement was so economical, so precisely calculated, that it seemed almost accidental, the SEAL's ultimate lesson in minimum required effort. Chris stumbled on his own momentum. Before Alex or Mark could react, Evelyn's phone was back in her hand, the camera flash illuminating Alex's face. Filming unprovoked aggravated assault by armed military officer, she narrated calmly to the camera. Attempted assault with a blunt weapon against an unarmed civilian. I have your full name and rank, Captain Harrington. Alex lunged for the phone. Turn that damn thing off. Interesting, Evelyn commented. Now it's obstruction of justice. At that exact moment, the back door of the VFW opened, and Gunny Rex walked out, his phone recording. I've already called the MPs and the Provost Marshal, Captain. And I've sent the videos to the base commander's personal assistant. You're fired, Rex. And this bar is closing down tomorrow. Alex shrieked. It won't. A new voice, sharp as ice, cut through the night. A black woman in a sharp dress uniform emerged from the unmarked SUV in the shadows, her posture radiating absolute, unassailable authority. She wore a colonel's rank and the specific insignia of a Staff Judge Advocate, SJA. Because I am Colonel Lena Hayes, the Staff Judge Advocate for this command, the colonel announced. And I just witnessed 4 military officers commit at least 5 documented articles of misconduct. Alex's face drained to a sickening gray. Chris froze, baton forgotten. Colonel Hayes approached calmly. Harassment, conduct unbecoming, abuse of authority, and attempted aggravated assault. Shall I continue? Evelyn put away her cell phone and crossed her arms. A discreet, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. Colonel Hayes, it's good to see you. You're early. The silence was absolute, terrifying. Mark closed his eyes in shame. Alex's drunken brain struggled violently to process the casual, commanding familiarity between the colonel and the grandma. Colonel Hayes stood between the 4 junior officers and the seemingly fragile Evelyn Vance. The silence was absolute, broken only by the distant sounds of base machinery. They started it, Colonel. Ensign Chris Mills stammered, his body shaking, the baton forgotten and dangling weakly from his hand. She provoked us. She refused to leave, she was hostile. We were maintaining discipline. Really? Colonel Hayes' voice was low, authoritative, and utterly cold. Because the videos I've received show 4 uniformed officers, clearly intoxicated by self-importance, initiating a conflict, ignoring multiple warnings, and attempting to physically assault a civilian. Is that the discipline you maintain, Ensign? The kind that violates the core ethical tenets of the UCMJ. Captain Alex Harrington's drunken haze was dissolving into a cold, sickening panic. He had based his entire reality on the fact that he was the highest rank present, the arbiter of the social order in his territory. The presence of a colonel directly refuted that reality. Yet, the most unsettling variable remained the grandma. Wait, what? Alex finally managed to articulate, his voice a pathetic squeak. Colonel, with all respect, who is this woman? She's a civilian. She needs to identify herself. Evelyn Vance smiled. It was the smile of a patient strategist who had just watched her enemy sign his own confession. She reached into her jacket and slowly, deliberately, presented her own military ID card and badge. She did not flash it, she presented it, holding it steady for Hayes and the others to read. Commander Evelyn Vance, United States Naval Special Warfare Command. SEAL Team 4. Currently serving as the Senior Advisor for Inter-Service Ethical Oversight at the Pentagon. The air felt like it had been punched out of the parking lot. The rank was one thing, a commander outranked a captain by 2 full pay grades, but the branch was the true weapon. A Navy SEAL commander, from the absolute pinnacle of operational authority, an individual known across all services for her ethical rigidity. Lieutenant Mark Davies closed his eyes, his professional instincts finally winning the fight against his social cowardice. He knew, instantaneously, that his career, his aspirations, his entire future, had just disintegrated. Ensign Chris Mills stumbled backward, his baton clattering on the asphalt. The realization that he had attempted to strike a decorated SEAL commander, a legend whose operational history dwarfed his entire life, was a physical blow. Captain Alex Harrington, the Alpha Arrogance, stood frozen. His mind raced, calculating the political and legal implications. He had not just harassed a civilian, he had committed multiple felonious UCMJ violations against a superior officer, one who held an official oversight role. The charge wasn't merely misconduct, it was insubordination and disrespect of a superior officer, an offense that mandates a general court-martial, GCM, and imprisonment. Colonel Hayes stepped forward, her attention now fully on the officers. Commander Vance is active duty, on official temporary deployment to this command. Her presence here was an authorized inspection of ethical conduct. You 4 have failed that inspection fundamentally. She turned to Gunny Rex, the VFW owner. Sergeant Major, thank you for your video evidence. Commander Vance, I require the original video and audio logs from your military-grade device immediately for chain of custody protocols. I assure you, the evidence is now sealed and irrefutable. Evelyn calmly handed over the phone. Colonel, the device records ambient audio and video from the moment it detects a sudden increase in emotional tension or volume in the immediate vicinity. It has logged every threat, including Captain Harrington's verbal admission of intent to conduct an illegal search and arrest. The arrival of 2 uniformed military police MPs, cars sealed the fate of the officers. The MPs, upon seeing the colonel's SJA insignia and hearing the phrase, SEAL Commander Vance, moved with military precision, bypassing the junior officers entirely and reporting directly to Hayes. Colonel, we received the call from Provost Marshall. Who are the subjects? Colonel Hayes pointed to the 4 men, who were now standing in a miserable, defeated huddle. These 4, Captain Harrington, Lieutenant Davies, Ensign Mills, and Lieutenant J.G. Price. Charges include Article 133, Article 134, and attempted aggravated assault against a superior officer. The MPs, professional and emotionless, pulled out their restraints. Alex, Mark, Chris, and Ryan were handcuffed, their own gear used against them, in the VFW parking lot. Alex's attempt to regain control was a pathetic whimper. Commander Vance, Alex pleaded, please. I didn't know. It was a mistake. We were just joking. Evelyn looked at him, her eyes clear but devoid of warmth. Captain Harrington, I gave you 4 separate, explicit warnings to cease your misconduct and apologize. You mistook dignity for weakness. I am obligated to report a fundamental ethical failure, not accept excuses. The uniform demands better. The subsequent legal proceedings were ruthless, clinical, and rapid. The goal of Colonel Hayes, working in conjunction with Commander Vance's oversight mandate, was not rehabilitation, but institutional detoxification. The 4 officers were immediately transferred to a military detention facility and held in solitary confinement pending trial. Their case was immediately flagged as a high-priority public trust failure and escalated to a general court-martial, GCM, the highest level of military judicial review, bypassing lower-level administrative actions. In her opening arguments, Hayes focused relentlessly on the ethical standards set by the UCMJ, not just the physical facts. Violation of institutional trust. The officers committed misconduct in a VFW hall, a place sacred to military veterans, compounding the offense. Abuse of rank. Their actions were predicated entirely on the arrogant use of their rank to intimidate a perceived inferior, a direct violation of Article 133, conduct unbecoming. Spoliation and obstruction. Captain Harrington's attempt to destroy Commander Vance's evidence and his radio call committing to an illegal arrest proved premeditated malice. The evidence was overwhelming: 4 video angles, Vance's, Rex's, Hayes' dashcam, and the bar's internal feed, synced perfectly with the audio log from Commander Vance's military device, creating an irrefutable timeline of escalating misconduct. Lieutenant Mark Davies, the weak conscience, broke first. He provided a full, tearful confession, detailing the established pattern of harassment by Alex Harrington and his crew. While this did not save him from a GCM, it served as critical aggravating evidence against his co-defendants, confirming the behavior was systemic, not a one-off error. The court, composed of senior officers from various branches, issued the verdicts swiftly. The severity was absolute, reflecting the need to send a clear, unyielding message across the entire armed forces regarding ethical conduct and the respect for seniority, even when in civilian attire. Captain Alex Harrington, the leader found guilty of Article 133, Article 134, aggravated assault, and obstruction. Sentence: dishonorable discharge, immediate forfeiture of all pay and benefits, and 3 years confinement in a military correctional facility. His career was not just ended, it was erased and criminalized. Ensign Chris Mills, the aggressor found guilty of Article 133 and Article 134, attempted aggravated assault. Sentence: dishonorable discharge, forfeiture of pay, and 1 year confinement. Lieutenant J.G. Ryan Price, the conformist found guilty of Article 133, failure to intervene in misconduct. His silence was judged as complicity. Sentence: dishonorable discharge and 6 months confinement. Lieutenant Mark Davies, the weak conscience found guilty of Article 133. Given his full cooperation and demonstration of genuine remorse, his sentence was mitigated: administrative separation, other than honorable discharge, and forfeiture of all service scholarship opportunities. A devastating, but less criminalized, outcome. The military justice system, which Alex Harrington had always assumed would protect him, had crushed him with clinical efficiency. The story did not end in the courtroom, it exploded online. Gunny Rex, with the SJA's strategic approval, released the key moments of the video, blurring the faces of the patrons but making the officers' actions and Commander Vance's devastating final ID reveal shockingly clear. The video, titled "4 Captains Learn the Hard Way, Don't Mess with Grandma Seal," went instantly viral within the military community, then leaked into the national press. Within 24 hours, the hashtag the Vance Protocol was trending globally. The Department of Defense was forced to issue a public statement confirming the integrity of the GCM process and acknowledging Commander Vance's role in exposing the ethical rot. Millions watched the moment Ensign Mills swung the baton, followed by Commander Vance's calm, measured narration of the felony. Confined to his cell, stripped of his uniform, Alex was tormented by the news reports. He learned that his own family was ashamed, his wife had initiated divorce proceedings, and his reputation was permanently destroyed. He was destroyed by the sheer elegance of Evelyn Vance's patient strategy. He realized that she never needed to physically fight. She simply needed him to fail his oath in front of the camera. Chris Mills, released after his confinement, found himself unemployable. His military discipline, once his pride, was now a stamp of criminal shame. Lieutenant J.G. Price wandered aimlessly, consumed by the guilt of his silence. His failure was not in what he did, but in what he allowed to happen. Commander Evelyn Vance did not seek the spotlight. She used the incident as the definitive, documented case study to implement systemic reform. Within months, Commander Vance was promoted to the rank of Rear Admiral, lower half, and was then, within the year, elevated to Vice Admiral, and finally, the historic rank of 4-star Admiral, becoming the first woman and the first black woman to hold the position of Chief of Ethical and Institutional Oversight for the Department of Defense. Her promotion was not a political gesture. It was the institutional recognition that the military needed her unyielding moral compass at the highest level of command. Her greatest legacy was the mandatory, service-wide reform program she instituted, the Commander Vance Protocol. Respect is not rank-dependent. The protocol required every officer, regardless of branch or rank, to undergo a mandatory ethical re-evaluation focused on humility and sensory intelligence. The humility exercise, officers were anonymously placed in civilian settings, like the VFW, with no rank insignia and subjected to low-level bureaucratic friction and verbal disrespect, specifically designed to test their reaction to perceived authoritylessness. Any attempt to use military rank to intimidate led to automatic failure and career review. Sensory intelligence training. Recruits were trained, just as Evelyn had been decades prior, to read the ethical atmosphere, to spot the nervous fidgeting, the overly aggressive posture, and the telltale signs of entitlement that preceded misconduct. The doctrine, her core teaching, enshrined in the new manual, was, your uniform is not a shield of privilege, it is a mantle of responsibility. The moment you use your rank to intimidate the vulnerable, you forfeit your right to wear it. Admiral Vance addressed a graduating class at the Naval Academy, her story now legend. Arrogance, she said, her voice clear and resonant, is not a shield, it is a magnet for consequence. Your greatest strength is not your weapon, nor your rank, but your ethical silence, the discipline to wait, observe, and only act when the moral and legal high ground is absolutely yours. Commander Vance taught us that justice has no color. It has only unassailable consequences. Years later, Alex Harrington was indeed serving coffee at a roadside diner, his life a monument to his monumental error. The weight of the dishonorable discharge was absolute, no access to military hospitals, no pension, no dignity. He watched Admiral Vance being interviewed on national television, leading the new generation of ethical leadership. He realized, with crushing finality, that he had had all the privileges, rank, resources, opportunity, and the commander had only her dignity and her ethical discipline. Yet, she had built an unassailable legacy, and he was left with nothing but shame. The best revenge was never to destroy enemies. It was to build a system so ethical that their arrogance could not survive it. Evelyn Vance proved it.